right, here's some news stories that caught my attention. This one I was very pleased to see. I was just giving a presentation last week about this, and I have some demonstrations of it and such. I mean, large language models don't really reason at all. They don't understand the question. They don't understand what they're saying. All they do is not that different than what old-fashioned search engines do. They take the words in the prompt, and they look for an example in their training data that matches that. Now, of course, the technical way they do that is they have made a mathematical model of a vast pile of data from the internet. So instead of doing what Google does and actually picking individual pages from the internet and showing you matching pages, what they have done is make a mathematical model of the language used in pages, and they find they use that model to extrapolate from the training data, but that amounts to essentially Googling, finding some number of pages that have text like your training data, and then sort of averaging the results together. That's essentially what it does. So none of that involves actually understanding anything. It doesn't know a verb from a noun. It doesn't know what's going on. It doesn't understand the meaning of its answer. It's just like a student that just memorizes pages of a textbook, and then if you ask them a question, they try to find a matching page in a textbook and repeat the answer without understanding the question or the answer. And they've shown this, and they've shown it a variety of ways. One way they did it was to take, there's a standardized test of 8,000 grade school mathematical word problems. And they have examples of these. The word problems are like this. Oliver picks 44 kiwis on Friday. Then he picks 58 kiwis on Saturday. On Sunday, he picks double the number of kiwis he did on Friday. How many kiwis does he have? That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So you have to take 44 plus 58 plus twice 44. And what they found was if you change the name of the people, the name of the fruit, that degrades the quality of the model quite a bit, which would tend to suggest that they've been trained on a database containing these exact questions. And another thing is if you add some irrelevant information, like 5 of them are a bit smaller than average, then almost all the models will get confused and subtract those 5. And that's interesting. You know, I think the same thing would happen to my students. I mean, why would you put this information in there if you're not supposed to pay attention to it? And, you know, this is where I would feel like if I put this on a quiz, I'd feel a little bad about this because maybe the small ones don't count as kiwis. Maybe they should only count as half a kiwi or something. It does seem to me to throw some doubt into it. But anyway, that does fool it, and they find a lot of things. So, you know, the point is you can distract it by adding extra text, and you can change irrelevant things, and it will change the quality of the output, all of which shows that it's not actually understanding the problem and going through steps to solve it. It's just doing some kind of simple pattern matching. And this is the big message, and I'm always telling everybody about AI. AI is a lot stupider than people think it is. It is not really understanding things. That's why when the AI companies say we're going to have AGI, it's going to be as smart as a human very soon, within a few years, I don't believe that at all. It's not even remotely as smart as a human now. It is, what it is actually, I think, is what Skinner thought humans were. P.F. Skinner was a psychologist, and he thought everything we do is just reflex. Input, output, just match the pattern. And I think that's what AIs are. And I think many psychologists have tested this and concluded that we are, in fact, far more complicated than just Skinner, simple input-output mapping. So Trump, his phones got hacked, I think, through phishing. At least I heard that some of his data got stolen, and there was a big argument whether they should be allowed to put this on Twitter or not. Apparently they stole the Oppo file on J.D. Vance before they chose him to be the VP, and it wasn't all that exciting, but it was stolen data, and apparently it was Iran that hacked them, so they wanted to make their phones stronger, and that part is interesting to me. They've got these unhackable phones, supposedly. Green Hills Software that makes software for fighter jets, I think. And I didn't know Green Hill made phones, but I looked it up, and they do. And here's their in development environment I looked at, because I wondered if I could get a virtual version of this phone to work on with students. And I think the answer is no. I think the operating system is classified, not open source or anything like it. But they do talk about it here. You can pay for this development environment, and then you can develop for their operating system. And so they have safety certified compilers, debuggers. You can debug the thing, and you can go back in time. You can roll it back to previous states, memory leak detection, all kinds of things. You can save snapshots. You can go backwards. You have a history viewer that shows how it got to the current state. How did the program get here? Where's time being spent? It has a graph that shows how long each part of the code is taking to run, which would be very useful for performance and also for real-time performance, which is what you need for fighter jets. If you have a normal phone or normal Windows computer, or a Mac for that, if you click a button, you don't really know how long it is before things happen. It might happen quickly, it might happen after several seconds because it's busy doing something else, and normally you don't care. But if you have something like a fighter jet, you do care. You want to have absolute control over the time between a request and fulfilling that request, so you can steer the jet and things like that. So they have provided the development environment for this, back-in-time debugging, some kind of double check to identify programming errors before running your program. So that's they claim there's no exploitable bugs, and maybe that's true because their system is very good at finding them, supposedly. It sounds great. I wish there was some version of this I could get my hands on and play with and give my students, especially for my secure coding class. But as far as I know, this stuff is classified and proprietary and not available. But anyway, the Trump campaign probably did the right thing. Probably these phones running on that stuff are a whole lot harder to hack. They are claiming it'll be immune to attacks like Predator and Pegasus, which are the big advanced $1 million kits that people are using to hack people's phones these days. And that's probably true. So Windows 10 is going to have end of support in 1 year. This is really pretty awful because Windows 11 requires new hardware, so millions of PCs are going to be made into junk for no good reason. There's no reason you can't run Windows 11 on the old hardware. There have been hacks to do that. It seems to be fine. So this seems to be another Microsoft hardware boondoggle. They did something similar to this around the time Vista came out. It's very strange behavior, especially for a company like Microsoft that does not make their money selling hardware. If they made their money selling hardware, I could see how they would want to force everybody to buy new hardware, but they make their money selling software. So why would they want to do this? It's hard to understand. This is the old Microsoft I've despised for years. I say Microsoft was very smart about AI and OpenAI, which surprised me because they're usually like this. Just baffling, stupid decisions that harm their company and harm their customers is Microsoft's standard act in trade. But as far as AI, they were very smart. So that was a brief moment of light in a generally murky company lifetime. So this is kind of cute. There's malware to steal your Android pins. So what it does is it shows fake login screens to banking and otherwise. So it'll get your banking details. When you log in, you're not really logging into your bank. You're sending your data to the criminals. And then the thing will freeze up and show a fake lock screen demanding your PIN. So they'll get your PIN too. This seems quite effective. And they say this is actually a web page. It's not really the PIN, but they're able to show it full screen. So there's no clue for the user that it's not a lock screen. So that's pretty impressive. And it seems like Android might need to add some more, they call these things UI redress attacks. Display something deceptive on the screen to trick you into putting in data. And it sounds like Microsoft, Google needs to add more defenses against this to Android. So robot vacuums, a whole bunch of them made by Ecovacs. They have been getting taken over from the internet. People are taking them over and then swearing at people. Apparently they have a camera on them, so people can take them over and then they can see who people are in there. He reset the password and rebooted it. The vacuum started moving again, and now people started screaming at him. So I wonder how they're getting in. And I think they didn't make it clear exactly what the flaw was to let them in here. They found that the accounts are password protected and a further 4-digit PIN code. Oh, I remember this. The PIN code is not validated server side. This is a fairly common mistake. San Francisco parking meters made this error and others, where the PIN is just validated on the device in firmware or source code you can access. It isn't set off to a server somewhere. So, as I say, if you just use a tool like Chrome Web Inspector, you can bypass it. I think you can just modify the code to quit asking for it, or modify the copy of the PIN in the web page. So anyway, they've been notified of vulnerabilities. They say there'll be a security update in November to deal with this. Anyway, this is in general true of most Internet of Things devices. They tend to have very poor security and tend to get hacked pretty often. So I didn't know this was pretty awesome. The FBI created a cryptocurrency so they could watch it being abused. So they created their own cryptocurrency, and then what they wanted to catch was fraudulent marketplaces for cryptocurrency, which they essentially all are. They all engage in wash trading, for example, where they want to make it look like a lot of people are interested in this currency, so they just trade it between a couple of their own accounts. So they can say a huge volume of this moved today when it didn't. These are all tricks that used to be in like the normal stock exchange, but it's regulated there, but it's not really regulated very well in cryptocurrency. But the feds are now currently catching cryptocurrency exchanges for this. Securities and Exchange Commission pointed it out. So that's very interesting. It sure would be nice if the U.S. government would do something about cryptocurrency fraud, because it is rampant and people lose a lot of money there. And this was cute, the kind of thing that happens a lot. So this guy had a problem with Adobe software. He talked to Adobe help desk for 2 weeks and nobody could fix it. He couldn't reinstall, he couldn't update his Adobe. And it turned out he needed a real tech support person to look at them. What they were doing was they were using something called fast boot to reboot the machine. And fast boot doesn't actually shut down and restart. It hibernates and restarts. I have the same problem with students. I keep telling students, restart your virtual machine, and they will close the VMware entirely without realizing that does not shut down the virtual machine. That just does a suspend, and when you come back, you're in the same place. So if what you needed to do required a real reboot, like installing software often does, you're not getting one, and that was the problem. And of course, the tech support person on the phone would have great difficulty finding this out. You'll say to this guy, did you shut it down? Did you restart it? And he'll say yes. And even though he didn't really shut it down and restart it, but they don't know the difference between a hibernate and recover and a real shutdown and a real restart. So that's a very realistic tech support problem. Anyway, let me stop the news.